Good morning, everyone. It is 10:30 a.m. It is Sunday, and that means it is time for Sunday Club. Good morning. Sorry, I'm looking at all of the screens. For those of you that are new, Sunday Club is a weekly live stream where every week we look at some Ruby on Rails coding. And together, kind of throughout the streams, we build an app. And what that app does is you can give it the ID of a YouTube channel at the moment, but maybe a Twitch channel in the future, and it will go and retrieve the videos from that channel and kind of build a little mini website for that channel. And each week we kind of look at a different aspect of what building an app like that could look like, different options of how we might approach different things, and kind of take a look at different gems and just kind of, look at Rails stuff in general together. So this week, very little follow-up. It has been a real week around here. It's been a very insane week. So we're just going to jump straight back in, really. So no follow-up from me. And we're going to jump back in on versioning. And versioning within a given for a given model. So individual instances of a given model in your Rails app. And I want to kind of go back to the planning we were doing a few weeks ago, and I'm going to bring some stuff up on the stream. We're just going to dive straight back in this week. We're going to take it pretty easy. It's really snowy outside here. There's a big storm here in the UK. It's called the Beast from the East 2. I saw on the news is what they have named this storm, which is crazy. So it's snowy outside my window right now, and it's been a long week, so we're going to take it nice and easy. Just take a look at some Ruby code and have a chilled Sunday morning, I think. So let me just check that we've got audio working. Yep, great. Okay, good. And the stream is running. We've got chat open. Okay, cool. So let's go take a look and maybe draw some pictures, because that's really the most laid back thing we could do on a Sunday morning. So if you remember from a few streams ago, this was basically the process of what we were talking about, which is the relationship between our app and, in this instance, YouTube, but it could be Twitch or any other third-party provider that we really care about. I'm just going to zoom in on this a little bit, see if we can get that even a bit bigger. Okay, too big. Great. Okay, so hopefully this is visible. So this was the kind of depth of our planning. We drew 5 boxes on a screen and just smashed into some code. We took a minor deviation through some new hotwire stuff, but we're still kind of roughly on track. And the key to what we were looking at here, let me grab this little doodad here I can draw, is these little lines here is what we were looking at recently. So how did we get told by our third-party provider that things had changed at their end and we needed to know about it? So that was last week's stream. We were looking at what in YouTube they call them push notifications, often referred to as webhooks. I'm not sure if there's a semantic difference between those two, but I tend to just group them all as webhooks, where basically we were able to tell YouTube if this video's title or description, I think if this video's title or description changes, please tell us, please tell our application. And we looked at how we were going to register that webhook and then how we could receive it and what we could do. Now, for some webhooks, from some third-party services, you would actually get all of the information that has changed as well. You would actually get the payload of that webhook would contain all of the changes. That's not what happened on the YouTube one. On the YouTube one, we would actually just get a notification about the resource that had changed, the video that had changed, and then it was up to us to go and get it. So we had to go and retrieve those new details, which kind of still fits in with this model, but it's just a two-way trip rather than a one-way trip. So maybe if we could draw, this is our planning one. So, this does kind of do the job. What we really want to focus on is these lines here. Actually, let me just pop a link to this in case people want to look at this gibberish in the YouTube, from the YouTube video. So I'm just going to edit the description for this video and I'll just pop a link to this Jamboard in there. Cool. So that's in the YouTube description for today's stream. So when we go and retrieve, so we sign the user up for an account and we go and retrieve all of their videos when they give us the channel ID. So they say, yep, it's channel number 123. We're like, great, go and get all the videos. So then we go and retrieve video number 1 is the video that they've got on their YouTube channel. We go and pull it down. We go and retrieve that video. So now we have an instance on our side, on the app side, of video number 1. The user might make changes to video number 1 on our app side. They might change the title, the description, the thumbnail, whatever they want to do on our side. They then might go back to YouTube and make another change, so it becomes video 1A. And we've still got our changes here. We get a webhook from YouTube telling us that this video has changed, and we go and retrieve it. So based on the webhook, that's last week's stream, based on that webhook, we then go and get video 1A, and we create a new version here called video 1B. And what we've got is lots of versions of the same video. Now, we don't have to do this. What you might automatically do is just either ignore the changes on the YouTube side or not store any history here, and when they click a button, just overwrite everything that's here. It's totally up to us if we want to store versions, but I think it's interesting to look at because it creates some really interesting options for you to how you kind of provide that option to the user of like, hey, did you mean to do this? Especially anything to do with content. So some reasons that you might look at versioning for apps might be like, let's say you're building a content management system and they're writing blog posts. So they might have previous versions on that blog post and want to go back to something they had 3 weeks ago. And if you have overwritten your record every time, if you've overwritten that post model or whatever it is, you're like, well, I don't know, you overwrote it. So you've lost that one from 3 weeks ago. Good luck. If you had stored each version going along, you are able to say, oh, hey, well, here's a list of the changes you made. Do you want to go back? If you want a simple version of this, if you look at something like Google Docs, they have a little revision history aspect there, and you can kind of see the changes that people have made, and they have like a great little interface for it where you can see that everyone thinks different colors. You can build those types of things if you want to, but even if you just said, show me the one from last week, show me the record from last week, that would be fine. Another really useful version for this, another useful reason for things like this is internal debugging. So maybe you want to know what's changed. Like why has this thing ended up in this state? When did it change? How did that happen? So that could be a reason for that. Probably not something you want to be relying on if you're constantly getting problems that you can only solve by having a full versioned audited history of a model. Maybe there's a problem somewhere else, but it's a tool in the toolbox that you might have. Another reason, certainly one that I've bumped into on a couple of occasions actually, is customer support and customer communication. So the customer says, hey, this thing is in this present state, but giving the customer support team a revision history of how it was at a certain point, and so that they can see what the user did or maybe what the system did to the user's data, is another really handy thing that you can provide. So versioning has all of these uses that you can think about and apply to your own situation. This is just one kind of contrived example. Another thing that you might want to think about is kind of the downsides of it. So there is naturally you're storing more data. So rather than just storing the record itself, you've got each individual change. And if it changes a lot, that's a lot of data that suddenly you weren't storing before. It adds complexity to what is a fairly core path. So pressing save on a record, it saves. Suddenly you're adding this idea of having some mechanism to grab hold of that process and insert into it, storing this other copy. Administering those versions suddenly becomes your problem. The data protection aspects of them. So let's say it was a record that might contain something that is related to GDPR or other data privacy regulations wherever you are. You might have a record that's now not got personally identifiable information, for example, but maybe it did have 3 versions ago. So you are now storing that in the app, but you're not thinking about it because you think that it's not in the current version of that record. Again, that might be true. Like, let's say you're versioning your users and you have like this cool sanitization thing where maybe you're destroying those records or sanitizing them somehow for data protection, but actually you forget to do that for the versioning. Again, these are all really contrived examples, but just trying to think through both why this is really useful and just why you might want to, just other aspects of things you might want to consider around it. So this is all kind of, I've been kind of putting under the header of versioning, kind of model versioning. I'm sure there are a million more examples as to why you might want to do it, and I'm sure there are a million more things you might want to consider. But let's go take a look at some gems to do it for us, and then we can look at how we might do it ourselves as well. So I think this is the last time I'm going to refer to what is possibly one of the least useful diagrams I've drawn on this stream. This is a real low point. This is all right. Let's go take a look. Can we just, is there just like a one for versioning? This is, by the way, the Ruby toolbox. If you remember when we were looking at things like authorization, permissions, things like that, we use this Ruby toolbox. Go back and watch those streams if not, and they've got some really cool little metrics so you can evaluate these third-party libraries in Ruby land. So active record versioning, yep, great. So we've got the two that I would recognize here, which is PaperTrail and audited. So they've got them nicely categorized. Let's go take a look. And so if you remember, they basically tell us some cool stats, like a long-lived project that still receives updates and has a lovely score of 6.3 and has all these cool things that you can look at. So it's got 31.5 million downloads, so pretty popular. 111 releases. So you're really looking at like the incumbent, I guess you would call it. I mean, when this is going back to 3 releases in 2009, when we were all a lot younger. And audited, which is the next one that I'm aware of. This score, I think this is like some sort of internal score that they have on Ruby Toolbox is 6.3. We did look at this last time, and then this is 2.51. I can't remember exactly what that is, but 6 and 2 are quite far apart. If I'm assuming, I don't know if this is at 10 or something. But it'd be interesting to see what differences they have, like we did for, what did we look at? Devise. Oh no, not for Devise. We looked at we looked at role-based ones. So I think we looked at Pundit and Can and Clearance and a few of those other gems. And we just looked at what the difference was. Just because one is more popular around the incumbent doesn't mean it's the right fit for you for whatever reason. And those reasons would be unique to your personal preference, your project, your client, just any number of stuff. So the more we do this on the stream, I think people will kind of get a sense of how there are different things that we might look at. Oh, wow. There really are 2 incumbents in this because the next one down, I'm assuming they're ordered by score, is this one. And goes to 0.62 and has no release over 3 years, low commit activity for 3 years, and there's a lot of open issues. That's really indicating to you that this project might be fallow or not used anymore, and that you might not want to use it. But again, could be really useful to take a look at the code, consider how they had approached it, why was it here, what was useful about it. Logo, by the way, Vestal versions. I mean, that's, I don't actually see many pun names in gems a lot. LogGuides. Don't know how to pronounce that. Also, this is an interesting one. This one does them as JSON-B for Postgres, so that's good because you would get indexing on that, I think. So it could be super quick. Okay, so this one has 0.45, but does seem to be, so it's just not as popular, but does seem to be up to date. Way more released more recently. So they've obviously decided they've got a different take on the solution. Actors versions looks fallow again. Version foo. Okay, so we've got a few fallow ones down the bottom. Okay, well let's go take a look at the 2 most popular. So let's just pop straight to the GitHubs, and let's also take a look at this one as well, because this one seems, so we can take a look at these 3, and what we want to look at is kind of their approach, I think. So track changes to your models for auditing or versioning, see how a model looked at any stage in its life cycle, revert it to any version, or restore it after it has been destroyed. Oh, that's a really straightforward use case that I had totally skipped over when we were talking about it earlier. Restoring it after it's been destroyed. Like if you destroy the record but keep its audit history, you can bring it back. Again, be aware of any data protection issues you might have around that. But other than that, super useful. loads of technical considerations there in terms of like, yeah, I've never actually, I don't think I've ever used auditing for restoration after destroying. To be honest, yeah, that's really interesting. Let's take a look at that because I've immediately got loads of questions around that. So let's. Oh, okay, it's really looks like it's well documented just from even these paragraph headings. I'm just scrolling really quickly through. We're not stopping to look and install this yet. We're just going to take a look through them. So we're going to install the gem. So this gem works by having a versions table. And so you keep your original record where it is. So for us, that might be the video record. And we then have another table that is versions, and it will store the, I have used PaperTrail, but I'm guessing it stores, does it just store the diff? No, it can't do if you're doing it from, if you're doing a restore from just having it destroyed. So I'm guessing it stores the previous state before you updated it, and then maybe the diff as well. And by diff, I mean like only the data that changed. So like if you've got a model that has 10 attributes or 10 fields in that database or whatever, but only 2 of them changed, do you need to store the entire 10? Because you only care about the 2 that changed, like what actually changed between the 2 versions. Okay, so you then add a line to the model, which makes sense. This then adds that behavior to the widget model in this case. And this one I have used in PaperTrail before. So if you remember when we installed devise, we had current user was like something we could use in our controllers. And it told us whether who the user was if they were logged in. If there were no user logged in, you would bring back nil. So it both told you whether there was a user and also who it was if they're logged in. And so that allows us in PaperTrail to track who is responsible. So you can say, well, this model changed and it happened via this person, which I assume only works at the controller level, because I think current user is only up at the controller level. You got something that's happening on the system side, maybe you have to pass that down. And so the way this works is suddenly your model, your widget in this case, has a versions method, and suddenly you get access to all of these cool things the PaperTrail does. So you can say, right, go and get me the last version, and and that brings you back a version of your model, and then you get whodunit, which I love. ID of current user, the widget as it was before. Reify, null for a create event. Reify. Is that a real word that I'd never heard before? Reify. Make something concrete, more concrete or real. Make something abstract more concrete or real. I love that. Why have I not heard that word before? Reify. Reify? Maybe I've used this gem before, so maybe I obviously presumably have read these docs before, but that has not stuck in my brain. I'm going to try and use that in my day-to-day life somehow. PaperTrail stores the pre-changed version of the model, unlike some other auditing versioning plugins, so you can retrieve the original version. This is useful when you start keeping a PaperTrail for models that already have records in the database. This also means that PaperTrail does not waste space storing a version of the object as it currently stands. Right, okay, the versions method gives you previous versions. To get the current one, just call a finder in your current widget model. Okay, so it's saying it doesn't store a replica of the current one. It only stores the previous versions, which kind of makes sense. Okay, I'm going to jump over. So that's PaperTrail. Kind of familiar with that one. That was the incumbent one. So does audit have a pitch as to why it's different? So it's going to log changes. record who made those changes, save comments and associated models related to the change. Okay, so storing associated models. I wonder if Paperclip does that. Associations. Okay, so seems like perhaps not. So there's a whole thing there around us tracking associations in PaperTrail, whereas that's listed right in the first line of audited. Okay, so maybe that might be a differentiator. Okay, pretty. So this is the same. Upgrades. So browse generate audited install. Okay, so this uses YAML. So there was one at the end that we saw that was using JSON-B. So even the format of the format of the audit history is different. That could be enough. If you're using, oh, okay, so they actually have a Postgres. In the next line, they literally have a JSON-B option here if you're using Postgres. Because that's supported, yeah, that's supported natively within Postgres. Cool, okay. So then we have, rather than versions from our previous gem, this one has audits. Make a change, and it's added another audit. Destroy the record, it's added another audit. Again, use it audits. So okay, similar here. Audited changes, so I'm assuming that's our diff. What field changed and what did it change from and to? Really sure that PaperTrail did that because I think I've used that for something that I can't remember back in the past. I don't know what it's called here. Sorry, I'm just skimming back through the PaperTrail docs just to see what they call that. Holy crap, there's a lot of docs here. So choosing attributes. Diffing versions, here we go. Yep, okay, cool. So we get a change set model here. And it's the same thing, you get the attribute name and then the initial value and then what it was changed to. Prior to version 10, the object changes were only stored for create and update events. As of 10, they're stored for all 3 events. Okay, so please be aware that PaperTrail doesn't use diffs internally. When I designed PaperTrail, I wanted simplicity and robustness, so I decided to make each version of an object self-contained. A version stores all of its object's data, not a diff from the previous version. This means you can delete any version without affecting another. To diff non-adjacent versions, you'll have to write your own code. Okay, so that's a really kind of useful way to phrase it. It's not, I am storing what changed from the previous version. It's saying I'm storing this version, and by the sounds of it, and what changed, but I'm not using what changed. I'm literally only care about the new version. Cool. And again, these will all play into what you want to do with it, how you want to store it, the amount of data generated, all of those things that we talked about considering right at the start. Specifying columns, so you might not want to audit changes on some fields. Again, might be data protection, might be data volumes. You might only care about certain things. Even if you are doing something for customer support, maybe they only really care about like the status or state of something and when that changed. Maybe just keeping your own life simpler. Oh, okay, this one's cool. So this has built-in audit commenting. So maybe you remember really early on in the Sunday Club app, we were saying like we wanted to have where the users could administrate a model, and then when admins could administrate the model, what you might do is any change that the admin made, you might give them a field and force them to put an audit comment, like why are admins interacting with a record on behalf of the user? And so you could use the audit comment for that. That would be potentially useful for that. Could be for devs, like, hey, I've had to change this, or writing a script or something. Okay, so these seem really similar. Okay, so similar approaches. I'm not seeing anything leap out on these that seem different. So let's take a look at the more recent one. Database changes logs for Rails. LogGuides. LogGuides provides tools for logging DB record changes when using Postgres, just like audit. Okay, amazing. So this is a really useful line. What's different about this gem from the other two we've just looked at? Just like Audited and PaperTrail do, but faster. And then there's a link here, so presumably this is going to tell me we want to compare LogGuides with the most popular versioning for Rails PaperTrail to run this benchmark. Okay, so it's going to say that it is for inserts. Wow, okay, so PaperTrail is going to make your insert nearly 2x slower, and LogGuides isn't going to affect it at all. That's on insert, update. PaperTrail 1.64 slower. LogGuides. Oh, performance is another thing that we forgot to touch on at the start. We talked about the complexity of adding this behavior around saving, but we didn't mention the performance cost. We really well highlighted here. So there is going to be a performance cost. So again, if you're talking at like auditing a high throughput change on your application, and you work in a high volume application, if it's that high volume, you could possibly put these in as well. Maybe you could look at using something like this gem, which does it faster, or you could. Yeah, you still have to do it, but could you do something where you, it depends if you need it to be guaranteed to happen or not. It's like, could you just shove it in a cache and then, no, anyway, I'm sure these gem authors have thought long and hard about all those things. And then here we've got LogGuides still being faster than PaperTrail, even though there are 5 fields, retrieving the diff, getting specific diffs, memory usage. Well, way less memory usage here. Is this just storing the diff, or is this storing the whole record, the LogGuides one? Right, okay, so one of the big changes here might be that it's at the DB level using triggers rather than just using Ruby. They have a section called How Is It Pronounced? Okay. I've been saying LogGuides, which doesn't seem right, is there? LogGuides, what the? LogGuides. I don't know how to read that. LogGuides water. Okay, well that's good. At least there is a real way to pronounce it. LogGuides. So is this? Oh wait. So is this only using? It says you allows you to create DB level log using triggers. Is that how this gem works, or does it? Is that just one of the options? So you install the gem, run an install script, and run the migration. Okay, so LogGuides uses DB functions and triggers, hence you need to use the SQL format for a schema dump. Okay, so this really is a rethink of the previous two, because as I understand it, I don't think PaperTrail does use triggers in the database. Okay, so you has LogGuides. So previously we saw we had like PaperTrail or whatever. I forgot what it has, PaperTrail or whatever it is. Right, okay, so to backfill table data, i.e. create snapshots, add backfill options to the generator. Now your migration should contain. So this is how to get those. Let's create snapshot, blah, blah, blah. I'm just looking how to actually get those triggers set up. Right, okay, so when you do your generate, that's when all of that work happens by the looks of it. So it did say this was Postgres specific, so I don't know if there is a MySQL version of this or whatever other database you might be using. Get different. Once it's working, it looks like the API is pretty similar. You can get information about the versions. Once you've got it running and you're storing your different versions, you're essentially just treating those as individual records and just want to act on them. So the APIs are likely to be similar there, I guess. Track responsibility. So that's the kind of who done it. Oh, they even have a who done it model as well. Disable associations. This does support it and it's off by default. So that's different from the PaperTrail one we saw earlier, which has now got a separate project to look at working with those. Oh, I love a new relic graph that does that. Let's ignore log data. Okay, I haven't really gone into detail around full table columns and next. Okay, it looks like there might be some more work on your part here to really know and understand a lot of the mechanics of how this gem works in terms of potential performance costs that might kick in. So if you do look at using this one, I would definitely recommend really getting into the weeds of these docs. Like I would really want to have read and understood these docs from top to bottom and have any questions kind of get answered if I was going to go ahead with this one. But yeah, it seems like a really good, so it's pitches that it's faster and it's got benchmarks to back that up. So if that's your jam, then that's going to be really useful. If performance is a thought for you. I want to drop back to PaperTrail, which I think is kind of the winner in terms of popularity and simplicity. So is there kind of like an overview of, let's go take a look at the actual code, shall we? So those are generators. Show.setup. Okay, so just looking to see trail. I'm kind of looking to see if build version or create. I'm just looking to see if there's like an easy overview to show us how this works. The trouble with a gem, kind of this, kind of this fully featured and kind of this old, and I don't mean old in a bad way. I mean like this kind of has been used for a long time. Is is that it might not be quite as skimmable during a stream as possible, but essentially I'm assuming what it's doing is just wrapping the kind of normal save that Rails does, grabbing a version of that record and shoving it into the versions table. I'm assuming it's also using oh, okay, yeah. So I was going to say, I was assuming it's also using Rails' dirty stuff. It looks like they're actually smart enough. So if if you save a record in Rails, and you've saved, let's say you've saved save a video, and you've changed the name and the description, those would be those attributes would be dirty. Those would be the one. Dirty is such a weird word. Dirty. They have changed basically from the record that you have in the database. And so when you then save it, those are the changes that are going to be made. That as a versioning or an auditing tool is really useful because you're like, well, Active Model already knows which ones are dirty, so I know that those are the ones I care about. So if you look what's happening here, I'm just kind of skimming through the source code at random, just kind of clicking into the trail. So update columns in Rails doesn't do that. Update columns actually explicitly skips. It just does the write. I think it skips validation. I think it skips callbacks. Yeah, I think it skips validations and callbacks but it does the write to the database. So it's like, get this in, don't ask any questions, get it in the database. But obviously what PaperTrail wants to do is still record that as a change. So it can't use the save changes or changes API. A bunch of that changed recently, I think. So we need to build our own hash for the changes that we made directly to the database. So they build their own hash there. Columns record update columns. So record update columns then goes off and so I think PT80 was their associated records thing, just from looking at those docs earlier. That's the association, I guess. Okay, yeah, so why am I looking at this? Well, the reason I'm interested in looking at this is perhaps you could say we could do this ourselves. Like that is one of the thoughts that you could ask, and again is usually healthy to ask before putting in a third-party dependency. Like, what do we care about here, and do we need to build this ourselves? So let's say we have our video model, and we're going to call save. Do we want to do something specific within our, I don't know what, we don't want to deal with all the complexity of having the gem. We only really care about doing the versioning. Maybe we only care about the versioning when it comes back from that YouTube webhook. Maybe we only store those as separate versions, so we wouldn't need to do anything with our model. That would be a consideration. Like, you don't have to use a third-party gem if you only need like 1% of what it's doing, or for one specific use case, you could code that up yourself. So that's another aspect of when should you consider not using a gem. It's like, can you think that your use case is so simple now that you could just code it yourself? You always have the option of switching to the gem in the future, providing you don't code yourself into a crazy corner. Or you could go the other way around and say, well, no, we know we're going to use this gem because we're doing this basic implementation now, but we are very sure, never certain, that we're going to do this on more models or in more scenarios or something like that. So where did we have our little YouTube webhook thing? Yeah, so last week we looked at this webhook coming back. So what we could do here is we got this, this was just the ID basically. So this is just pseudocode. I'm just going to put in here just to give an example. So instead of putting the gem on the video and just hitting save, so in here we have to go, we get a webhook back from YouTube that says, hey, something about this video changed. Now we've already got a record of this video, and we say, right, we've got the video ID. So we could say, our video is this one. That's like our, that's like the app video. We could then go and say, oh, we actually have that code somewhere, don't we? We could do this. We could do the YouTube video would be the YouTube video new. That was the code we got from the gem. It doesn't do a retrieve or anything. Simply setting that seems to, when it needs the instance, the gem goes and gets it. I'm assuming there's some sort of API thing we could do to trigger that and populate the instance, but this worked. So then we've got these. Here is the one on our side. Here is the one on YouTube's side, because again the webhook didn't contain the actual record. It just had the ID that we needed to go and get it. So then this is us going to get it, going to retrieve it, and now we say, well, instead of what we could do is say, if we were using PaperTrail, we could say app. I don't know if the attributes matched or whatever. You could kind of do. I don't know. You could get that. You could basically get a hash of the fields that you cared about from the YouTube video and do something like that. Let's assume that the YouTube video was just a hash of things that matched exactly that. I know that wouldn't happen, but like there, if you were sorting it, if you're using PaperTrail, and you know it was going to happen with a normal Rails update, you could just save it or override it as the latest version. You might not want the YouTube one to override your local changes, so you could actually. I wonder if PaperTrail has like save a version. Yeah, you could just store it maybe as a new version in PaperTrail. So remember, the record itself, the video in PaperTrail, remains the primary record. Only the versions are just snapshots. So here, do they have something that's like custom version classes? I'm not quite sure if they have this, but maybe they could do like, maybe you could do version.create, and then you could do something like, again, hopefully if it was just a hash, but you could just do the name, could be the YouTube video dot name. Again, this is pseudocode. I don't know the attributes, just these are examples. And then this could be this. So this is, again, I'm just throwing out examples. This version would be the version class that's coming from PaperTrail. So you are representing that change from the YouTube side in your app as a PaperTrail version. That's another example. So you haven't changed the video record, but suddenly you've made a new audit history record thing, a new version in PaperTrail's language, and that suddenly gives you a mechanism to get back to there, even though it never actually didn't happen on your side. It just suddenly becomes part of your model history. So that's pretty cool. I think the last thing we'll do today is look at what a UI for that. So I think what we'll do is we'll use PaperTrail, install it, and see if we can get a UI where we can see those versions, maybe an admin or something like that. So what am I trying to demonstrate here? So those are a couple of different versions that ways you could think about approaching this using PaperTrail, but you don't have to. So you could create your own model called I don't know. Maybe you don't care about anything on your side. You only care about the YouTube side. So it could be like, because we're doing Twitch as well. So it could be like video third party, I guess. So like video external version or something. And so you could just treat this as another model altogether. Like you don't need to build a lot of what PaperTrail has if you don't need it. So then you just have this other thing and you're like, well, every time I get a webhook back, I'm going to go and grab its ID. I'm going to go and retrieve that video from the third-party platform, and I'm going to store it as a video external version record. And again, you could do the same thing. You could say that's going to be the name. You could store whatever you wanted. Name, description would be this .description. Cool. And without needing to have all of the added complexity of, so PaperTrail, like adding those performance costs to .update and all and the updates and the writes and everything. You just have this for the webhook. So you're just storing these. Let's go back to our Jamboard. You're only storing these versions. Oh, hello, there's someone here. Hello. I love that Google adds these names like Anonymous Pumpkin. So hello, Anonymous Pumpkin, whoever that is. So rather than, if you didn't want to save the internal changes, so changes the user has made on your side, you could only store the ones that have come from the third party here. So this would then be a list of video external version. Again, you'd name that model whatever you want. You're just storing them one after the other. Again, you would want to store when that change was made, which would probably be either in this hash or like the updated app from the last updated or whatever the attribute is from that video. So the upside of that is you've got way lower complexity. You haven't had to add in this third-party gem. It's not doing other stuff. You're in full control. The downside is you've then got to go and build your own version of how do I get back to one of those. So then you would maybe have to build a viewer for that model in the admin area, or even for the user, whatever you need, to show them all of the video external versions. And if they click on one, presumably you want to say, hey, do you want to take all of this? Do you want to take all of these records and put them and make them the primary attributes for this model? So you would then need to write something which basically then takes like video. I don't know. You could do like assign attributes, and then you could do like if this was like the chosen revision. Again, this is all pseudocode. Like I'm just let's say they want the last one. Again, I'm just so name chosen revision dot name description chosen revision dot description, only with it spelled correctly. And that would be video. You'd have to have a video, so it could be like you're just working on one design. Again, it doesn't matter which one. This is just an example. So you want to take the last video and you want to update its fields to represent the ones from the last external version. And so you're like, okay, well, you could then assign the attributes. Again, you don't even need to assign attributes. That could just straight up be update. And that would perform the same task. It would basically say, well, I every time the webhook fires, I store the YouTube version. Here is this kind of video external version. And then when I allow the user, I build some sort of mechanism, whatever that may look like, to go and grab its attributes and then update the video record with it. With those attributes. And so that takes all of those kind of examples I've just laid out in the last 5 minutes, take you through from relying on a third-party gem and using all of that behavior and having it built in and doing all those things, all the way through to just building your own with your own models and only building the bits you need. And I think approaching that from a learner perspective is really useful, because so often it's really easy to grab the gem. You'll often find a tutorial using a gem or something like that. And maybe you get up and running really quickly, super valuable, like no problem with any of that. As you become more experienced, you will start to bump into having to maintain the versions of those gems on apps you're running, bumping into things the gem is doing that you didn't need or want, or causing performance issues or whatever. And so as you gain more experience, before adding a gem, you will think just reflexively almost, can I not add this? Like, how much of this do I really need? What would it look like to build an internal version for ourselves? What does that look like? How much of Rails can I lean into? Is there stuff that's already here that can help me? So there's a really non-coded examples of trying to get that thought process across. Hopefully that was useful. And I hope it made some sense. Okay, let's go back and get, we're not doing anything with that, I don't think. So those can all go. Let's get PaperTrail up and running. So let's do the easiest version of what I just described. Easiest in inverted commas. So let's go and get PaperTrail installed on this app because let's get something productive. I mean, we've just been looking at stuff for this whole time. I did say we were going to take it easy though because it's a wintry Sunday morning. Okay, so let's put PaperTrail in, and I'm just going to put the gem in our gem file. We're going to run bundle install. Move this over, bump the font size up a bit so we can see what's happening there. Great, so it's gone to get that. Looks like I already had the latest version. Were you already using this? Nope, I had to put it in. It's gone to get request tool. Okay, cool. So that is then there. Let's again, we're still working on that current work in progress branch, which is now grown. Maybe it will just always grow longer. Maybe I'll never find the time to go back and fix it. Maybe forever it will just be the ever-growing branch. Okay, so install PaperTrail gem. And then we're gonna add some sort of install script, I think. I think we do want the with changes thing. So let's run this whole command. Oops. But I think we do want with changes. There's so much like expected knowledge. To me, what this says, I may be misreading that, but that's basically like run this part. If you want the with changes feature, add this tag, and to indicate that we've put it in square brackets that it's optional. Like you're really expected to know that. Like maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that those square brackets have some semantic meaning, but I don't think so. So as a learner, I would just run the whole thing. Would that just break? Yeah. How are you supposed to know that as a learner? No, whatever. Cool. Okay, so this builds our migrations to create our versions table. And this one creates a migration to add those object changes, and those are the kind of diffs we were talking about earlier, I think. So then we can look at these migrations. So we've got our versions table. I think that's all from MySQL stuff. I think Postgres sorts that. I think that's all from MySQL as well. So we have item type, item ID, event, whodunit, and object. Yeah, so I don't quite know how that object is represented. I'm presuming it'll be just a serialized version of our model in some way, but I don't know what serializer it's using. It's then going to add an index to that. So these are our versions as they come through. And then the next one is adding a column to that, which is object changes. And I'm assuming it uses the presence of that column to know whether to implement those features or whatever. Cool. Okay, so then we can run those. Just running Rails DB migrate. Great, so that's now up and running. Let's just install schema. So let's just do that. Migrations for PaperTrail installation. That's fine. That'll get us there. Cool. So we can then add has PaperTrail to models we want to track. So let's do our video model, because that's the thing that's coming back. That's what we're representing in those callbacks, is a video that's changed on the YouTube side, and then it's changed on our side. So I think we can we can see that happening in real time. So let's open up a console. I say real time, I mean like, sorry, that was a poor choice of words. Basically, I think we can, now that we have the migrations run, adding this has PaperTrail to the model, I think that's enough. And we can check that by getting a video. So we're going to say video equals video.last. Great. And so that is DOD 143, and it's called Rails anew for the first tie ... here. And we should then be able to do video.versions, I think was the PaperTrail one. Yep, there are no versions. And so that's coming back as an active record associations collection proxy. So that means you're getting back something you already like know how to play with. So we'll have methods like .count, .last will be nil because there aren't any yet. But what we can do is make a change. And remember, this is the video, the instance of the video on our side, not the video on the YouTube side. So any changes we made, there's no mechanism to make those changes back on the YouTube side. So yeah, video dot name, I think is what the field was. I've been using that. I'm just nope. Title? Yes, title. Okay, wasn't name. Ignore every time I said name earlier. So video.title, and let's say the video title is now called test update title, exclamation mark. So we have changed that value, but we haven't saved it yet. So PaperTrail won't have kind of kicked in. So we've got an instance of a video. We've changed the title, but not persisted that change yet. So let's do video.save. Boom. Now, this is what we're looking for. Lot going on here all of a sudden that wasn't happening before. So before putting has PaperTrail on our record, we would have had these lines where we go and grab our channel, because presumably we need that for some validation or something, can't remember. But this is the line I'm really looking for. Update videos, set title as the new title, blah, 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 and change the update at. So we change the title to test update title. Amazing. That's exactly what we're looking for, and everything would have been done. Now, because of this new has PaperTrail, all of this happens. So here we have PaperTrail version create, insert into versions, and what it's inserting in is what type of model are we changing? It's a video. What ID is it? What is the event being performed? It's an update event. And then here is the object. And you can see here a serialized version of our video, and it's coming all the way down to here. So that is the record as it was. And so that's how it's able to be rebuilt if it gets destroyed, all those things. And so you can imagine if you have a really big model, a really big record that you're storing, and then you're storing version after version after version, that's a lot of data. So if you remember, there were tools in PaperTrail and audited and all these other ones. Maybe you only care about a couple of fields. Maybe you don't need to store the entire object every time, but that is the default behavior. The created at is for the version, not for the created at of the video. It's for the version. This change happened at this time. And here's our diff. So remember, we turned that feature on. This is object changes. So you can see the change was that we changed the title, and there is the old one, and there is the new one. And of course, because it's Rails, the diff also includes the updated at, because that moved from its previous timestamp to its new one. So the diff will also include the updated at as well. So now, if we go back to get our video, we'll just do video.versions.count now. We have one. So we now have a video and we have a version of it. And so I've already forgotten that API to go and look at the actual changes, versions.last. So whodunit, well, it should be, so we can do versions.last. That's the version we've just seen being inserted here. And then I think if we do whodunit, I think that should be nil. Yeah. So because it hasn't happened at the controller level with current user set, or we haven't set it when doing the update, it doesn't know who did it. What we should be able to do is find the diff. Oh, and I can't remember what it called the diff. Hang on a second. It was like object changes. Diffing versions, change set. Change set. Right, so there we go. That's a much more readable version. So that's what we were looking at previously, where we have a hash and the key is the field that changed, and the value is an array with the first item being the previous value and the second item being the newer version, the newer value. Sorry, my brain sparked out. So again, you've then got another thing in there, which is the key here is updated at, then the previous version, and then the new version, the new value. Too many words. New value. Cool. Okay, so why are we looking at all of this? So because what we can now do is show this, hopefully. So let's see what kind of, I forgot what UI we have going on. So I think we can look at a video in some sort of... So we can look at a channel shows a list of videos. We only have edit for a video. Have we got time? How long have we got? No. Okay, we got a little bit of time before we go off. Okay, so let's see if we can. Let's just see if we can build out a quick show view. We could maybe use what's on the edit view, that form. And let's see if we can just do, let's just see if we can do a quick show view just for this. Let's really make the current work in progress branch as messy as possible. So channel only has show video. So let's just really quickly, I'm going to skip the test for now just because let's just keep moving. I'm not even sure we'll need this past this example, but I want to take a look at what it looks like to have a UI with the versioning in. So I've added a root for that show. And then we're going to add the file for it. And then I think there's a partial for this. Here. And let's make this the way that you get to the show view, because this is the partial that represents it in the this is the way that represents it in the list, and that is going to be control panel video path video. Cool. That should get you there, and then this can just be showing video at video, and then in the controller, I'm just doing this really quickly, so I'm not gonna try and go into detail about what I'm doing. I'm basically just setting up a very basic show view here. That would work without this, but I'm just putting it here explicitly because we've already put the show view there, and we already have an action in the controller, which is the control panel videos controller that sets the instance variable with video. I'm just putting this here just to represent it explicitly, but we wouldn't need it because we've got this. So let's fire up a server and see if that very quick bit of coding gets us anywhere. Great, and let's see if our history gets us to a usable URL. Let's got a console open. Can I just grab a user? I always tend to use the same password. So let's see if we can get into something here. 12 are in development. Great. Okay. Ah, amazing. Okay, so this is a list of videos. Again, you might need to look at previous. If this is your first time ever seeing this stream, and you're thinking, "Oh my god, what a mess! What are they doing here?" Well, we've never done any UI work, and I keep promising to go back and do some design and make it all look lovely in like a non-Rails based stream, and I'd have to do it midweek. But I started promising that like a few months ago, and it's been a really busy period at work. So just forgive me. It looks like a mess. Let's not worry about that. But it does work. You have the thumbnail, and you have the title, and you have the description of each video. You have the edit button, which uses Hotwire. So if you go back a couple of weeks and look at our Hotwire stream, super cool, fancy inline editing, looks like a dog's dinner, works amazingly. And the change that we have just made is to make these titles now URLs. So you can see when I hover over it, I get my little pointer hand thingy, and it's going to take me hopefully to that show view we just made. It does not, for reasons that I assume are Hotwire based. Right, is it because that's within that turbo frame that I now need to do things outside of it? Interesting. Okay, well, this is interesting. So turbo rails just need a link within a turbo frame that doesn't use the frame. Need those docs. They had like a playbook thingy. Where was that? Turbo handbook. Here we go. Frames. Okay, great. So hopefully there is a way to get a link working into or out of a frame. Navigation can drive the entire page, so they go like target to top. Okay, cool. So can I do that? If that works, I'll come back and explain what just happened. Okay, it does. Okay, so I will explain what just happened there. So on a previous stream, we implemented turbo frames, which is a feature of Turbo, which is now part of Hotwire, which is new for Rails. And so what is happening here is on this screen, each of these partials, the kind of thumbnail, title, description, edit button, we're looping over the videos we have in the database for this channel. We are rendering the partial for each one. And what we're saying is, hey, put that inside a turbo frame. Now, by default, what Turbo is trying to do is look for behavior like the edit button, where we click edit, it goes and gets the edit view and takes out all of the bits it doesn't need and just swaps out the frames. So it's like, hey, I'm going to go get the whole edit view. Which bit do I need? It's like, oh, just the bit that fits in here. And the way it knows is by the fact that there's a corresponding frame with the same ID on the edit view. And so it knows to only swap those out. When I put the link in here on this line for the title, it was trying to do the same thing. So Turbo was grabbing it, going to get the other URL. I assume, I didn't check, but I assume it's going to get the other URL and saying, great, what should I swap out? I'm a turbo frame. Tell me what to change. And then there was no corresponding frame on the other end. So it didn't do anything. It just didn't change anything. So what we were able to do is add a target attribute. And a target is something you can add to a normal HTML attribute. Maybe it's in a frame, like a standard frame element within just an HTML frame, and you can add a target and it to a link tag, to an A tag, and underscore blank will open it up in a new tab, or it used to be a new window, and then underscore top will basically make it jump out of its frame and populate the whole window. So I'm guessing that is Hotwire following that kind of old HTML principle, but basically that's the line in the docs I was looking for, was like, how do I get out of the frame? I don't always want to set the ID and have a corresponding frame. So target top is how you do that. I'm hoping that made some sense. I just needed to get out of that frame pretty quickly. So when we click, we go through it, showing video 118. Great, that's exactly where we were trying to get to. Now, why do we want to do that? Because we now want to get in our show view We've got video, but what we could do is get versions. And let's just put that in here, and we could just put each version in a div. We don't really care. So what are we doing here? We're saying video dot versions, which comes from PaperTrail, which we've just added each. And so here we can then loop over those. And for each one, we're going to show it in a div. And what are we going to put in here? We could do, well, let's actually render it. We could do version dot change set, just to have something to spit out. And so that will look awful, but it will be there, hopefully. What was the video that we actually made a change for? Video. Oh no, I actually have an instance of it. Video. D is 143. Can you use a get to 143? I think there is some auth over that. Again, it says amazing. Right, so let's make another change. So let's change 14. Oh, let's do it. Let's do it from the UI. Oh my god, amazing. So let's leave this tab open. Oh, everything's coming together. When we do put a UI on this, there is a real app here. It just looks so bad. And everything's half finished everywhere, but there's only like a few hours work just to polish things up and like make a nice little tutorial. I will get around to it at some point, I promise. One day. And we're gonna live the dream. It's been a busy time, folks. Don't judge me. Right, okay, so here, this is 143. Oh no, we can just do 118, who cares? So we can open up a new window. This is 118, no versions of 118. Let's make our first change. So we're gonna say, oh no, I deleted the title. And we're gonna update that. Cool. So they've deleted the title. Let's go back to our show view. So this is our channel. This is our channel page, and it's just listing each of the videos in a partial. But remember, we've just built a show view for that video. So we're going to update it. Now, here is our change. So we've got, oh no, I deleted the title, our new value, and then there's our previous one. So then we're going to edit it again. Uh-oh. Now I deleted the description. Cool, so those are our two new records. There's our other change. Right, now, what we've got here is some sort of API to restore these that I've already forgotten. So we can do, reverting and undeleting. PaperTrail makes reverting to a previous version easy. Oh, okay, cool. Oh, I was hoping this would be quicker, but like, I don't really want to build out the controller action for us, I suppose we can. I'm just trying to think of the quickest way to demo this. So basically, what we could do here, so let's because we're kind of rounding things off now, let's talk about why we were doing this. So when we first were talking about versioning and why we would want to do this. Yeah, let's not bother building the actual button that does it. Let's talk about where we were trying to get to. And we'll do the YouTube webhook version last. Okay. What we now have is a user interface that looks awful, but represents each individual change. So this is an admin area. So you're administrating your videos, and you're like, oh great, I've made some changes, and you go through it, it shows you these. Now you wouldn't have them look like this. You could just have something like that. You know, you could do whatever you want. You would have like a different version of this, and then you would have here like a little button or a link or whatever. Yeah, you could just do link to, and then like I'm just gonna put a dead link for now. Sorry, I've done the wrong way around. Link to restore. There we go, nowhere. So that would be restore. And then how do you make a stupid link a different color in this? Oh, fuck, look, can I just put in button or whatever that is? All the buttons are about 3 feet high because I've gone back to doing CSS. Right. Amazing. Right. So you would then have a restore button that doesn't look in any way logical for each one, right? So to do that, you could then put a quick I don't really like adding actions here, so I would probably add in a restorations controller or something like control panel videos restorations controller, and it would create a restoration, and it would grab the version and then use the use this API. So you would tell it which version of that you wanted to get back to, the previous version. Or you would say .versions.find or whatever, then just assign it to the record, and it would sort it out. I'm hoping that makes sense to people. So basically, you just need to know the version that you want to revert back to, and then you'd have a controller action that just goes and finds it, assigns it to the new widget, and then calls .save. Boom, you've done your restore. And you could do that here by having you could have like def restore. And add an action on your existing controller. I tend not to do that a lot. Well, it depends on the code base, but if I have my choice, I would rather have like you're acting on a video. So I would personally rather have control panel / videos restorations controller. This is something we looked at when we did suspensions, and then I would create a restoration, and all the restoration would do would be the same thing. So you would just grab, I don't know, you'd grab the version and do it. But anyway. Trying to skip forward. Come on, Max. So, okay, it's really snowing a bit harder outside now. So that would work. But the versions you really care about are the ones now coming from YouTube, right? That was the other thing we were talking about, is you've got your versions here, which are now you're storing a version every. Oops, I've deleted the name. Oops, I've deleted the description. Uh-oh. Then someone goes and makes this change on the YouTube side. So then they come back to where we were last week, which was our webhook controller. So here we've got our webhook coming in, and it gives us the video ID of the video ID of the video that changed. And all we need to do is, well, we kind of covered this earlier. I mean, we now have a bunch of different options. So if we made a version here, can we make a version just straight up? Can we do... are they PaperTrail versions? What did I say earlier, like this? Okay, cool. So can we say new, and then could we give it... item type, maybe we could just give it item, don't know. That would be video item ID. I'm just seeing if we have to actually call save to make this. And then what was the video we were working with? It's the one in the UI, wasn't it? So this one 118. Oh, because you'd have to serialize it correctly. Let's see if we could do this. Where am I trying to get to? I'm trying to get to... whether we could just add that record. Whether we can add that webhook update as a previous version rather than having to change the current version. So I'm looking to try and see if we can create a version that isn't the most recent one. What is that going to be called? Save, just attributes, limiting them. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. You could... Who's responsible? We could dive into the gem and see how it's doing its serialization and just copy that. There might be a really simple way to do this. I'm hoping this is making sense. The chat's not too busy today, but I'm hoping this is making some sense as to what I'm trying to get to here, which is that when we fire that webhook, when we get that webhook notification from YouTube in our app, we go and grab this instance and we store its properties as a version, but we do it using PaperTrail rather than having to code our own version like we spoke about earlier, so that it would show up here, and that updated app would appear as if, so we would make changes on our side. So one's, oh, I updated the title, one's, oh, I updated the description, and the other one could be, yay, I made changes on YouTube. Nothing changes in our record on our side at that point, but we do get another restore button, and that restore button, we could then jump back to the YouTube version. So I'm trying to just see. Metadata will override the normal values that PT would have said, so common. Meta object dangerous. Okay, so I'm just skimming the docs to see if this is a thing or not, or if I'm an idiot. You don't have to do it this way. Like, you could do this a million different ways, like we spoke about earlier. You could do your own one. Yeah, I think I'm skipping around to... here we go. By default, PaperTrail stores as a YAML. Okay, so... So does this mean you could do this? Object... Now I'm curious. Now I'm just kind of... Temp object. Dump, get me the... Are there class methods on that? Module methods as well. Okay, so can I do... Okay. Oh, I need... So this version, so this is new version. Oh, well, it doesn't really matter, but what I also needed to do was event, and it was update. I don't know, created it. So can I then do new version.save? Whoa, so is that now going to show up in here? So at the moment we have two versions. Ah, amazing, yes. Okay. Right, it's really hard to visualize because you've got to hold all of that in your head. But what's actually happening here is, let's take this UI back to what it was. The show view for this Oh, I'll leave the restore button actually. We'll take it back to show the change set and put our version back. Right, so now we have 3. Oh no. Oh, okay, so the change set wasn't set. I didn't populate it. Oh, it doesn't really matter. We could do object here. These are going to be massive. Okay. Oh no, I don't think it's quite. Oh no, it hasn't worked. Look, in the same way. But you get the gist. Maybe you get the gist if you're following along. Yeah, I don't think this has. It's serialized it as I need it to. I think we'd need to check more of that. The theory is kind of there. So we've got 2 changes that come from app side, and then 1 change that comes from the webhook side that we could then insert back in time if we worked out how to get that serialization work. And I'm not going to keep going into the stream because I've kind of got the theory of what I was trying to get across. I hope. Give me any feedback or any comments if that makes sense. So that does kind of round off what I wanted to look at in kind of these versioning. I don't know what I'm going to do when we do come to tidy this up. Because we still need to go back and build like the reliable thing that goes to like in our webhook processor. We're actually not going to do that retrieval yet. All we got working was the fact that we could get the ID. And then again, as with this week, last week, I was like, well, then all you need to do is go and grab it and save it. That's fine. And this week, all I've said is like, oh, well, okay, cool. Once you've saved it, we can make a version history. Maybe we go and round those things off. Maybe we don't. I'm not too sure if I'm that fussed. All right, let's round things up, I think, for this week. So what did we look at this week? So we looked at active record and kind of model versioning. So taking a record that you've got in your system, take a model that you've got in your system, and you have a record of it, but you actually want to store an additional record for every change that's been made to it. And you can saw how different gems can be used for that. So we looked at PaperTrail, we looked at Audited, and we looked at LogGuids. And we looked at all the different, well, not all, we looked at just some of the different configurations we have for that, and some of the implications and thought processes around implementing it. Maybe you only want to do a couple of attributes. Maybe you want to do everything. Maybe the gems take different approaches. We also looked at how you might not bother to do it at all. If you have a really specific use case, you don't have to implement an entire gem for that. You could just build your own version. You could build kind of a stripped down implementation yourself, where all you're doing is just creating an active record object that you need, and then just updating those attributes if you need to restore your model. We then implemented PaperTrail. We then looked at once we got it working, we had it storing versions, and then we got those versions running in a show view. We then worked out very quickly how we would add a restore button, but didn't look at actually implementing that because that's fairly mechanical. We could just go through and there's an API in PaperTrail, but also you're just saying, hey, this record now equals that, then do .save. And then we came back to our original webhook, which was the trigger for this thinking, which is like, well, we've had a change on YouTube or a third party. We want that represented here. And we were looking at how we could get it inserted into the change history, but not necessarily overriding the most recent version of the record. And what would that look like? And so I was looking at how we could do that with the gems. So we covered a whole bunch of stuff around versioning. And hopefully some of it was useful to some people. Thank you so much for people who've been watching along live this morning. You can find previous streams in this channel. We'll be back next week. I'll have a think about what we want to take a look at. As usual, you can access the repo links are in the YouTube description. And let me know if there's anything that you particularly want to see or have any questions about. Hopefully that was pretty chilled out. It's still snowing here. Have a wonderful week, everyone, and I will see you next weekend. Thanks a lot.